Let's welcome Eric Starwalker.
Don't clap yet. You're not. I haven't said anything. Okay, that's it. We're done for the night. Welcome, everyone. Is everyone feeling the boost that started this morning with the moon going into Aries and the full moon tomorrow? Yeah. So fire in the sky. We are truly living in extraordinary times, and the play of the archetypes on the national and international stage is demonstrating that in a very entertaining and enlightening way. How many of you have been following the archetype play of our presidential race? The play of the archetypes. I watch with interest because it's not the people that have been positioned by the Spirit to play that drama out, but it's the archetypes that are playing through them. And if we look beyond the personalities involved to the archetypes they are representing, then we can relate the archetypes they're playing out to our own personal lives and recognize those same dynamics being presented to us in our own journey. So the drama of the Uranus-Eris conjunction, the Joker is wild. Anything and everything is possible, and lightning strikes out of the blue in completely unexpected, radical ways that have the potential of completely turning our personal and global reality on its head. So which one of our presidential candidates would you say is playing out that archetype?
Good question.
And being the entertainer he is, it's interesting because numerologically, this particular election bears striking resemblance or resonance with the election of Ronald Reagan, the 1980-81 election. So we're seeing a similar archetype of an entertainer coming out of left field, presenting himself or herself to the American psyche as a possible presidential candidate or nominee, and that archetype is playing itself out in not only the global level, but in the way in which we relate to the entertainer within us, who is saying, okay, I understand the nature of the system I'm embraced in, I'm immersed in, but do I have the personal power to stand up and take my place as a creative force to transform my own life and the lives of others around me? Mm-hmm. So there's been a marked shift with Jupiter having entered Libra. I mentioned it in my last talk. And the peace wave now is building across the planet, offering us an opportunity to recognize the way through with the female powers of love, peace, and harmony, support, nurturing, understanding, becoming the dominant factor through which we move forward and transform our own personal lives and the lives of the world around us. So, which one of the presidential candidates represents that archetype? So you can see how these two archetypes are playing themselves out as counterbalancing points, offering an opportunity to find a midpoint between where we can be radically creative and dynamic and turning our own reality upside down if necessary, but also recognizing the need to listen to, harmonize with, and support each other in a way in which we can move forward in a constructive and creative fashion. Now this polarity, this dynamic, is being fully emphasized and activated with the full moon tomorrow. It's the sun in Libra opposite the moon in Aries, and it's the first of 3 supermoons. Every year we have a threefold supermoon sequence with the moon approaching its closest point to the Earth on the full moon. The biggest of the supermoons is actually in November. So this is the first leading up to the November supermoon. This particular full moon, supermoon, tomorrow evening is the most powerful of the 3, as the moon in the latter part of Aries will be conjunct this Uranus-Eris conjunction that I've been talking about with the Joker is wild. And it's exactly opposing the sun. The full moon's always a sun-moon opposition, with the sun himself being conjunct a newly discovered minor planet called Haumea. Anybody familiar with Hawaiian mythology here? Haumea was the creatrix, goddess of sacred birth. And she is conjunct the sun. The sun will be conjuncting her in Libra, with Jupiter close by, opening the opportunity for the female power, the creatrix, the mother power of sacred birth, to balance the Joker is wild of radical evolution through sudden unexpected events, to enable us to connect at a deeper level so that we feel supported, heard, and understood, to make those changes together rather than needing to have lightning strike, all hell break loose, and have the changes required instituted through unexpected events. So how many of you feel like the other shoe's about to drop and that something's got to give somewhere? I mean, I've been watching this unfolding story with Donald Trump, just complete absolute amazement. I mean, how can it get any stranger? And then, sure enough, it does. It's like, wow. I mean, wow. And that's the Uranus-Eris conjunction, making itself known in our own lives, with the unexpected becoming expected. So there also is a point in the sky. It's not really a body or a planet. It's called the dark moon Lilith. It's tied to the elliptical orbit of the moon. And the dark moon Lilith tends to suggest the area through which we are drawn into dancing with the shadow. The shadow is an aspect of ourselves that's hidden within us, that we haven't quite given the opportunity to come out fully into the light because of our own personal shame or judgment or fear of an aspect of our psyche we haven't been able to integrate, dance with, and love. Now, the shadow isn't independent of us. It's not just created outside of ourselves. It's something that we, in our own personal psychic evolution, have created because of our need to dive deeper into self-love, into embracing a part of ourselves that we had not quite been able to fully dance with and embrace before. So wherever Lilith is transiting suggests an area of the human psyche that's being activated and intensified in order to grab our attention in a way in which we dive more deeply into the issue involved and bring light into the dark where there had been darkness before. Now Lilith has been in Scorpio for quite some time now and will remain so until February of 2017. So the issues being brought up in the national arena around the abuse of power, the abuse of the Kundalini force, the Scorpio in its higher aspect, is the activation of the Kundalini. And when the Kundalini is activated in the human animal, the first chakra it tends to activate is the second chakra. That's why when you read astrological literature about Scorpio, it's associated with sex, but it's not really sexual energy. It's the rising in the Kundalini. When the Kundalini rises from the base chakra and energizes the human animal, the second chakra usually becomes highly activated. And that's why the issue of the abuse of Kundalini energy around the experience of sexuality, particularly by men now, has become central to the campaign. It's almost like it doesn't matter who's going to become president, because the issue of the right use of power, particularly around our sexuality, needed to become center stage so the female powers could find a voice, come forward, and start the conversation about right use of power in the very sacred arena of connecting at a very intimate and deep level. So this is a conversation that's going on not just globally and nationally, but in our own personal lives. So, and interestingly enough, Hillary Clinton is a triple Scorpio rising. So this Lilith in Scorpio is really activating her chart. And as we speak, Lilith is sitting on her Venus in Scorpio in the 12th house. So that's why we see very little of her. She's kind of disappeared. And with the upcoming Mars-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn on the 19th, the very day of the final presidential debate, these issues are now, whenever Mars and Pluto combine, it's like the volcano erupts. So we've been feeling this building, and Mars and Pluto in Capricorn would suggest the opportunity to right ourselves with integrity around contests of power. Because Capricorn is always about rising your full adult stature, taking your place in the world, in your community, and leaving your legacy with integrity. And Mars, when Mars activates Pluto, Mars is actually the lower octave of Pluto. So when they combine, it's like, woo, this is major Kundalini activation. But in Capricorn, it's around the right use of power in terms of how you influence the world around you. And Hillary Clinton, in her natal chart, her birth chart, has the exact Mars-Pluto conjunction in Leo in her 9th house. So she, by nature, is a Kundalini activator. You know, Mars-Pluto people, they don't need to say or do anything. I mean, you can sit and wait in the back of the room and all kinds of stuff starts happening in a room. It's like it activates everyone's Kundalini. So it's really interesting to me that on the very day of the last presidential debate, transiting Mars is conjunct Pluto, and Hillary Clinton has an exact Mars-Pluto conjunction in Leo. Now Donald Trump has also Mars in Leo, as Hillary does, but it's widely separated from Pluto, so they're not quite conjunct. So he also has that same Mars-Pluto Kundalini activating energy, but it's in his 12th house, so it's more hidden. So I'm looking forward to the 18th in particular, and the 19th. I've talked in my last talks about the disposorship patterns that channel energy from one planet to another. And right now, all the disposorships are channeling all the energy of the larger planets through Venus. So Venus, when she changes sign, is always important. But even more so now, because of where the other planets are, and they're looking to Venus as their guide. Venus is in the last degrees of Scorpio as we speak, and she will be shifting into Sagittarius on the 18th, the day before the last presidential debate. And then the following day we have the Mars-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn. So there's a lot of energy surrounding this marker in the national psyche of the American people, but also everyone around the world is watching this also. And once Venus shifts into Sagittarius, she then looks to Jupiter as her guide. Jupiter is in Libra, and Jupiter's looking to Venus as his guide. So they're looking to each other as each other's guides, and that's called mutual reception in astrology. It's an incredibly liberating, expansive opening for the peacemakers of the world and the female powers of the world to take the lead and open the way toward resolution, healing, and harmonious cooperation from that point onward. So it's interesting to me that the final debate opens the way for that. And from the 18th of this month, October, through the second week of November, Venus will remain in Sagittarius. On election day, November 8th, Mars is in the final degrees of Capricorn, about to go into Aquarius that evening. Now Mars, Aquarius is ruled by Uranus. Uranus is in Aries, and Aries is ruled by Mars. So on the evening of the election day, Mars and Uranus will be in mutual reception, combining with one another. And when Mars and Uranus get together, that's radical revolution. It's almost like the day of the next day when the winner is declared. If Trump loses, his people will be up in arms, and there'll be a real amazing kind of revolutionary energy that begins to show itself from that point onward. So we're in exciting times right now. It feels like as the moon approaches fullness, there's a pressure that builds. You almost feel like you're sitting like a pressure cooker, trying to keep the lid from blowing off. And as when the moon reaches exact degree, that's at 9:23 p.m. tomorrow evening, Saturday, there's this tremendous opening and surge of energy outward. So between now and tomorrow evening, being in Aries especially, the fire energies are really building, and we may feel like we're just needing to practice or a little spiritual discipline in how we react emotionally or react emotionally to others around us, particularly if they get really wound up about any particular issue. Because this Uranus energy with the moon can manifest as a sudden turn of events that came out of the blue and completely unexpectedly catches you off guard. And in those moments, our spiritual discipline is tested. How many of you have kind of lost it when someone says something unexpected or does something unexpected, and find yourself in a whirlwind of reaction rather than having the spiritual discipline to remain centered in your intention to remain constructive? So I'm just giving you a little heads up about that between now and tomorrow evening. And yeah, so the energies of play are really accentuated with this one. And if you can have a sense of humor about it all, and learn to be a little bit more playful about the surprises that crop up sometimes in your life, you'll find that you can just turn it on its head and turn it into an actually invigorating and stimulating experience rather than a crisis. So we have some genuine peacemakers here. Louis, your friends here.
Yeah. This is
And,
Len and Libby Feldman from San Mateo.
Mm-hmm. So your time has come between now and the end of next year, because once Jupiter shifts into Scorpio, the chips are down. So we have between now and next October to dive deep into the power of love, to determine how deeply committed we are to working out resolutions to seemingly intractable issues in our personal life and our community's life. So we find that once the Jupiter shifts into Scorpio by the end of next year, we will have so deeply bonded with one another that whatever crises may emerge, our bonds of friendship and love and commitment to one another have run so deep that we rise together rather than rise against one another, and find ourselves isolated in meeting the challenges rather than working together to rise to the occasion and find a greater unity in the midst of crisis. So many of us are feeling that this is an opportunity to dream our dreams awake and to find avenues through which we can build bridges across seemingly insurmountable barriers, find common ground, and rise together to meet the challenge of global unity, love, and cooperation. How many of you are feeling that right now? Are you seeing more signs or opportunities to do that? Okay. And once Venus enters Sagittarius on the 18th, we will all feel like we've navigated through some pretty treacherous waters this year, and that the payoff, the reward, is now beginning to make itself known and felt in a new sense of liberation and openness to understand and recognize how we are connected one to another. So we're almost there. And this full moon may just bring out a little bit more of our homework we need to do in terms of our reactive nature. But that will position us then to really begin to claim our freedom and the freedom to share our ideas and the way we understand the nature of the opportunities presented to us in a way that brings us together in a deeper and more cooperative fashion. So the election's almost over. I'm so glad. But once it's over, I think it's kind of interesting that Mars-Uranus mutual reception will kick in, and it's almost like the real revolution will begin. So hold on to your hats. Any questions at this point? Go ahead.
Jupiter has always been a kind of a clear, missing kind of thing for me. Would you mind going into kind of effect?
Jupiter's nature?
Yeah.
Yeah. When you want to gain a deeper understanding of a particular sign or planet, always look to the sign that preceded it. Jupiter is naturally associated with Sagittarius, right? Sagittarius is the expansive understanding of how greater principles tie us all together in a more conscious way. But what precedes that is Scorpio. Scorpio drives us deep into the core of our own shadow self.
Oh, okay.
In a way, in an initiatic way in which we face the underworld, claim our power, and then Jupiter follows that as a natural result of the deep transformative experience of Scorpio, with a new or more expanded understanding of how we're all connected.
So it's like spring.
Yeah, so Jupiter is like the response to having done the initiatic work of connecting to a deeper core within yourself, where the truth resides. And through that initiatic experience, that timeless experience, a new understanding, a broader understanding of Jupiter emerges. So wherever Jupiter is found is a consequence of your having gone through a deeply transformative personal experience that opens up a new and broader understanding of yourself and the world around you.
And in relation. So,
In Libra,
no, in relation to yourself and
and the world around you. Because Jupiter, when you connect to the archetypal depth of your own humanity, you realize where you're also connected with all of us, the rest of us, that we all share that common core, and then how to actually express that in a new, more expanded awareness or understanding is Jupiterian. And we have this incredible enthusiasm then to share the deep knowledge that we've gained through our own initiation. And then the idea to express it or find a vehicle through which to express that new understanding is called a belief system or a conceptual framework that you build in order to express the deep transformative experience you've had.
Okay. So it's kind of a way of sharing it.
Yeah, a way of sharing it. I mean, how many of you have gone through a profoundly transforming experience and then struggled to find a way to express that? And you may actually look to the world's religions or philosophies that seem to match what you've just experienced. But the Jupiterian, the adult Jupiterian, translates those higher philosophies or belief systems into their own words and says, this is what I've experienced, and this is how you speak from your own personal transformation. Otherwise, you just become a mouthpiece for others who have done their homework or who had a transformative experience and come up with an incredible understanding couched in a philosophy or a religion that really sings to you, but you're still speaking in another person's voice or from another person's experience.
I've noticed Sagittarians in general are probably the best social people I've ever met.
Yeah, they have a natural enthusiasm to share their experience. Yeah.
Impeccable.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like breathing for them or something. So that planet's associated with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, Jupiter is natural home is in Sagittarius. So. Go ahead.
I've been hearing a bit about the Great Attractor.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could kind of tie that in a little bit.
Yes, Saturn is at 14 Sag right now, and Sagittarius. And the Great Attractor is it's not a black hole, but it's a point in the sky that has incredible magnetic power. And that's why it's called a Great Attractor. Magnetism attracts, and it's like pulling like 10 or 11 galaxies into it. So whenever the Great Attractor is activated, it has this power to pull you in, to magnetize you. And it's interesting too that this Great Attractor is exactly conjunct the ascendant or rising sign of the United States of America, which can account for its incredible, and it's in Sagittarius, so it's the idea of the freedom and liberation to express yourself, Sagittarius, in your own philosophy, your own belief system, freedom of speech, in order to liberate the consciousness of the individual. So that's the ideal or the archetype of the United States of America is held high for the rest of the world. Saturn's sitting on Sagittarius right now. It's saying, well, the ideas you're expressing on a more expanded and conscious level stand the test of time. Are they doable? Here again, the presidential race. You know, Donald Trump can express all kinds of ideas, things he wants to accomplish, Sagittarius. But then Saturn comes along and says, sorry, you can't do that, you know, unless you're a Pol Pot dictator. You know, you've got to pull in, you know, the Congress and certain things that's the Saturn and Sagittarius influence. So our natural enthusiasm to expand into unknown territory is being asked to square up with what is possible in the long term. Will it stand the test of time? Does that explain it? Yeah. And if you have a particular connection in your own personal chart to 14 Sag, then you'll find that you are magnetized to certain people or events in that area of your chart, or through that particular planetary archetype. Go ahead.
So you talked a lot about tonight about power and also the misuse of power.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I heard that your first prescription in building a new life was listening.
Yes.
So what can you say a little more about power and listening? What's the relationship there?
It's the relationship is the difference between the yang aspect of power and the yin aspect of power. And the Venusian love wave tends to be tantric in its approach, which is led by the female power, the yin aspect. And we as males are being asked to listen, become receptive yin, to harmonize with what is, to really be in alignment with what is, before we are safely empowered to bring in the yang aspect of action. And that's the tantric way, is to really be present, the female power being present and really being receptive, to truly hear and experience from another person's point of view, before we are safely empowered to bring the yang aspect in and dance. If any of you do ecstatic dance and you do partner dancing, a good practice is mirroring the other. Just you know, if I'm with a female partner and I just watch her and I try to start mirroring her movement with her permission, obviously, and that puts me in harmony with her dance, her natural rhythm. And once that happens, then the creativity of both of us can come in and we do unusual, unexpected things. But my first step is to really be present and really experience and listen and be receptive to what is, so that I can dance with it in reality and harmony. And then the male power is energized, and the way opens for the yang energy to come in and dance. Yeah. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay. And I feel like, you know, with the 2000s now having opened, 2000 is a yin number, that way of approach is basically set as a tone of the 2000s and onward. Do you have any comments about that, or is that in alignment with the work you're doing?
That's a beautiful way of describing it in a new language for me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
congruent, I think,
Yeah.
with the way life works and our relationships work in real
Mhm.
life.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Does this also mean that guys right now should be like more entertaining their creative side and their, you know, feminine things, like being that focused on that? I mean, is that helpful?
Yeah, that's a natural response to being receptive.
That's what you're pretty much
Yeah.
saying, right?
When you really hear the call of the present moment, it's like your creativity is drawn out of you. It's like, oh, there's a, you know, a need here. Person struggling with their groceries, okay, and you see, you're listening, you're present, you're perceptive, and your creativity is to go and open the door for them. See, the yang aspect. But if you weren't present, if you were so completely distracted by your own need to get into the store, you wouldn't be present for the opportunity to have your own creative impulse open that door for them. And creativity, music, whatever form of creativity you are engaged in, is a natural response to wanting to elevate the lives of others. First, elevating your own life, because I play the flute, and I pretty much do it for myself. because I really feel the great, I just love the sound of the flute. And if others participate, then that's cool, but primarily I do it for myself.
I just bought a drum today for the same reason.
Yeah, exactly.
Little drum. That's cool.
But the expansive wave of this love wave, it really begins on the 18th. So we're still in the, it's pretty much in the shadow of it until we really begin to feel the breakthrough from the 18th onward through the middle of November. So I know I'm suggesting this, but we're not quite feeling it yet. Go ahead.
So I know, you said on the 19th, I think it's the Mars-Jupiter connection?
Mars-Pluto.
Mars-Pluto
Yeah.
connection.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering how that energy is going to manifest as far as Hillary, because that's her, how is that going to show up in her? What's that going to look like?
Well, you don't mess with the Mars-Pluto.
That's what I thought.
And, I think she's had, almost 70 years of rage building up inside her, being subject to a male-dominant society.
So do you think she'll really get passionate?
And, I think the lid might just begin to really blow right off in terms of her, Trump realizing has picked on the wrong person. And I kind of remember, I don't know if any of you saw this, but Trump had an event at a black church.
Yeah,
Did anybody see that video?
I saw that.
Yeah. For those of you that didn't see it, it was, what state was that in? Remember?
Mississippi.
South Carolina, I think it was.
Yeah, Southern state.
And Trump was really, he's been accused of not reaching out to the blacks, so he decided, well, I'll go speak at a black church. And talk about shadow work here. And they were obviously Hillary supporters, and he enters this little room. There's just a few people there. First of all, he's like completely has no idea what to do with that. And he gets up in front of these black people and starts dissing Hillary. And this big black woman comes over and just confronts him. Says, we did not invite you here for that. And Trump was like, and it was like a real demonstration of a woman taking her power and standing up to.
And what was perfect was the look on Trump's face.
Yeah, he was like completely flabbergasted. He had no idea what to do. He felt like
She was very
lynched.
kind in the way she said.
Yeah, she was very kind. She was the pastor,
Yeah.
and it was her church, and so we're seeing that aspect of the female power actually manifest with Hillary's Mars-Pluto conjunct and Scorpio rising.
I know she's a triple Scorpio.
Yeah, and Scorpio rising. She has the power to stand up for herself, so don't be too concerned about that. Go ahead.
Eric, Jill Stein is another woman who's standing up. Can you say a few words about her?
I haven't really looked at her chart, and but she doesn't have nearly the personal power that Hillary has.
No, obviously.
Yeah. But with this Uranus-Eris conjunction, the third one being in March, I feel that global events will begin to radically grab the headlines in such a way that's almost being inconsequential who becomes president. The only reason I would really be concerned is primarily about the Supreme Court nominations, because that lasts far beyond the next presidency. I feel like the real changes will begin occurring in 2020. So whoever is president this time is merely a placeholder for the real big changes beginning from the end of 2020 onward. The real age of illumination or enlightenment begins then.
Why do you say that?
The Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius, 1221.
Isn't Saturn the ruler of Aquarius?
No. But the Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions mark 20-year phases of sociological change. The last one was in the year 2000, and It marks the last Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in a 200-year period of Earth sign conjunctions and Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions, which basically mark the material age of the last 200 years. And the Enlightenment age, with Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions entering air signs for the next 200 years, begins on 12/21/2020, exactly 8 years after the end of the Mayan calendar, opening up a new Aquarian age of enlightenment, of the enlightenment of the mind. So this particular last 4 years is the culmination of 200 years of material emphasis, of the material industrial revolution in our relationship to Mother Earth, and its benefits, but also its dark side. So we needed a placeholder to allow this particular crop to fully mature, so we can see what this crop has brought to us without any doubt, before the real changes can fully get underway. So the crop is almost there, but it's not quite distinct enough to know which are the tares, which are the weeds, and which is the actual wheat. Plus we have this huge combination in Capricorn with Saturn, Jupiter, and Pluto in the teens, late teens, that will definitely consolidate this picture so clearly that we will then be in a position to comprehend the nature of the abuse of power in relationship to Mother Earth and our material existence here. Our capacity to actually be in harmonious relationship to the physical environment that we're living in. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay.
So are you saying in a way it doesn't really matter who's elected, that the way things are lined up, because this is all very new to me about all the things you're communicating here. It's fascinating. And what I'm picking up is because of what's happening in the next 4 years until 2020, in a way it doesn't really matter who's elected, because things have to play out until it's possible for these changes to take place. And if it's Trump, we're going to have one set of responses. If it's Hillary, we're going to have another set of responses. But whatever it is, it's going to force us into looking totally new about where we go from 2020. Is that what I'm hearing?
To some degree, I would agree with you, unless, if it weren't for the Supreme Court nominees.
Yes, you said that.
I would say yes, but I do really feel that a Trump nomination could really be disastrous for this country because of that. One reason. Yeah.
Who says that the changes are going to come from your governments or from the leaders of your countries?
Yeah. See, and that's the Jupiter Saturn in Aquarius starting in 2020. And Bernie Sanders kind of jumped the gun and was demonstrating that. He says, I don't care who's elected president, including me, we can't make the change. Don't look to me. Don't look to your government.
Yeah.
But that reality hasn't quite fully hit yet. I mean, Trump is kind of representing that to some degree.
Sanders has touched some real buttons.
Yeah, well,
on both ends.
He's speaking the truth, and but it's almost like he jumped the gun a little bit, and by 2020 we'll all be ready for Bernie Sanders or someone like that. And
I think we all already finished.
we're already ready, but we need the puppy dog needs to have his face rubbed in its stuff one last time before he really knows things. But with Uranus Eris conjunct now, anything's possible. And like I said, the people will rise in ways that we cannot imagine now, because global events will demand it. And we'll realize that we have got to work together in order to rise to the opportunity and overcome our differences in ways that we hadn't even imagined before. because the nature of the challenge will require that. Reminds me of a picture, you know, during floods, when the river floods, and you see a log floating down the river, and you'll see a rabbit and a wolf sitting on the same log, you know. Trying to keep it upright. But hopefully we don't need to scare ourselves into the changes that, you know, may need to be made. We can do so because we love and we care, and we're moved by compassion to move forward constructively. Go ahead.
Well, there's a time of real change and momentum, motivation. For example, the situation at Standing Rock that's happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's of historic proportions, isn't it?
Yes.
So what's the astrological significance behind what's happening there, and how do you see that playing out?
That's a long-standing historical issue that is now finally coming into the light. And the Native people have always had a voice that needs to be heard. It's not as simple as, in my understanding, as dividing indigenous against non-indigenous. Because we all, from a reincarnational point of view, have all played both sides. And many of those incarnated onto the reservations may actually be the white people who actually created the reservation. So, you know, looking at it from a soul perspective, I'm looking at ways we can come together around this issue and find a constructive way through without dividing us further. Because some are feeling personally captured by the idea of the pain suffered and the injustices done to the indigenous peoples in our past. And that road will only lead to further polarization. But the opportunity is there to transcend those ancient wounds and find a way to move forward constructively. I'm hoping that the indigenous people become more open-hearted to those they consider non-indigenous, and working together to find a constructive resolution. What's your perspective on it?
Well, I think it's a rallying cry for unity. I think that, you know, initially it started out as an indigenous protest, protection. But I think it's spread outside of that. I think that it's garnered attention for a global situation. I think this one more specifically around water. I think maybe it's the time of the indigenous power to rise up, to lead the way, really.
Yeah, I've spent time with Native people, with First Nations, and there's a unity. There's a not a black and a white, but there is definitely an issue there between inclusion and non-inclusion, particularly amongst the more traditional indigenous people. And they need to protect their individual rights in their sacred ways, but not in a way that's exclusionary to those who they don't consider a part of their own private circle. And that only leads to further division. So there's an awakening here, an opportunity here to transcend those differences. And I do see an opportunity to rise up as a people, to take a stand for what you know is right, and what you believe is right, in order to empower others to do the same in their own local communities, but not necessarily identified with one particular tribe or another. Is that clear? Yeah. Are you involved with the movement?
Just, you know, financially, I haven't been there.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Go ahead.
It was my understanding that the harmonic convergence in 1987 was the beginning of this astrological phenomena of change. Could you just kind of talk a little bit about how you see the coming of the new age? from your point of view, or broader, whatever.
Yeah, the Mayan calendar isn't particularly tied to the astrological cycles. It's got its own rhythm and calendar, so I can't really comment on that. I was here in 1987 from the Harmonic Convergence. It was awesome.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it was truly awesome. And are there anyone? Is there anyone here in the room that's really dived into the Mayan calendar?
It's the Mayan glyphs. It's
Yeah.
beyond the calendar.
Mhm.
It's a dualistic projection, but
Mhm.
it's the glyphs that are really the key codes, not only within the sequences, but also within the genomes of the original human.
Right. But she was asking specifically about astrological cycles in relationship to the ending of the Mayan calendar and the harmonic convergence. So is there anyone here in
The rebirthing of the golden age,
Yeah.
through the star glyphs is mapped out.
Yeah, and there's a
The seventh
certain, there's a
golden
certain
age.
timing or date to that?
Oh, this started in 2011
Mhm.
and cycled into 2012 and 2013.
Mhm.
And we mapped it, we actually have a website where we mapped it out.
Mhm.
People can go up and look on the website and see the glyphs all in the sequence with
Okay.
the lunar.
And what's the name of the website?
earthstarproject.com.
earthstarproject.com, so there's your answer. But astrologically, I'm pegging December 21st of 2020 as a real marker
Yes.
in terms of sociological change,
Mhm.
beginning of it.
My curiosity is what is it gonna look like? I mean, I have an idea what I think it's gonna look like, but astrologically speaking, what do you think it's gonna look like?
Opportunities will be presented at that time.
Okay.
They will completely surprise you. So I hold the future lightly, because by the time it arrives, the energy present will reveal itself. I understand the nature of the opportunity, but the way in which it's going to manifest is not only up to you, up to me, and up to all of us, in terms of the level of consciousness and personal discipline we've achieved to that point. Every astrological signature presents an opportunity of a particular nature. The way we engage the opportunity depends on our consciousness and what level of consciousness we've personally or globally achieved. Okay, this matrix is just an opportunity basket. What we do with those opportunities is up to us. But the opportunity will really begin to present itself from that point onward. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Can you speak on Mercury's position at this time? Synthesis?
See, Mercury is in Libra also, I believe. Yeah. So Mercury is in Libra with Jupiter in Libra and the Sun in Libra. So Mercury is kind of on the love train. It's like in the mood for love and open, harmonious relationship to one another. And with Jupiter there, it's more of a global perspective, saying we need to make peace with one another. Okay. Mercury will shift into Scorpio soon on the 24th. The Sun shifts into Scorpio on the 22nd. That's a week from Saturday, and then that following Sunday or Monday, Mercury shifts into Scorpio. So the energy field, the matrix, will be intensifying from the 22nd, and particularly the 24th of October onward. So we have a whole week following the supermoon of riding the love train and feeling that we have anchored deeply and unwaveringly into our commitment to follow the way of peace, love, and harmonious interaction. So that as the more challenging aspects of the matrix present themselves, our commitment has already been anchored deeply enough not to waver. So I imagine during this time we will all be guided to those with whom we can work in a more harmonious and constructive manner. So if the levee breaks, we know who to call. We know who we can trust, and we know with whom we can work together in an unwavering fashion. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Can you speak more on the shadow side that you were talking about? You know, something was going to Scorpio. And,
Yeah.
yeah. Can you elaborate on
If anyone needs to leave, or because we're going a little long, don't hesitate. I'm going to share a little story with you that kind of reveals the nature of the shadow to me. I was in Pasadena in a Hispanic area, and there was a local Hispanic restaurant there. So I walk in, and I'm the only white guy there, and these Hispanic people are looking at me like, what are you doing here? And I thought, and there was like it's almost like there was a fear in the air. I wasn't feeling safe. And I thought at the time that it was these Hispanic people that had a problem with me. So I ordered my food, I ate really quickly, and I walked out and I says, wait a minute, brother, there's something more here you need to see. And I recognized this is a shadow element of my own psyche. And it wasn't their being uptight with me. It was me fearing them that drove them into the shadow of my own consciousness and created a barrier between myself and them. It was completely untrue. I says, whoa, really? You mean I drove them into the shadow? That part of me that I call my shadow is like fears my own judgment. It's terrified of me. That shadow, that's supposed to be big, hairy monster, is actually terrified of coming into the light because of my potentially judging him. So he hides from me because he fears my judgment. Says, oh, really? You mean that I just need to lighten up here and support him coming out into the light? Love him enough to say, it's safe, brother. You can come out now. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to try to push you away. So rather than trying to heal the shadow or dive into the shadow, I just relax. Become more allowing, more compassionate, more inviting to the shadow, to allow him to come out into the open, that part of your psyche that you may have judged before, driven into the shadows, right? So that's the way now I relate from the visceral level to the shadow, and becoming more allowing, more compassionate, more open to really hearing what this part of me has to say and talking to him, encouraging him to come out into the light because it's safe. Is that clearer?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Is there a relation between the Kundalini rising and the shadow arising?
What was that?
Is there a relation between the Kundalini you talk about
Mhm.
and the shadow side with showing up?
Well, the Kundalini tends to activate everything. And if there's an aspect of you as a shadow that's energetically blocking a particular chakra, then that'll be intensified. That block will be intensified until it's, understood and released. So there's no direct relationship because the Kundalini is just life force energy. But as it activates, it can energize what those blockages that may be connected to the shadow psychically and intensify them so that you get a better look at what's blocking your energetic flow. Does that explain
Kind of.
a little clear? But I'm not quite, I'm feeling like there's a reason you're asking that, but I'm not quite sure.
I have a reason, but I don't know. It's hidden.
Anyone else have a comment about that? Okay,
No, I didn't have a comment about that.
okay. Go ahead.
Could you talk about astrologically where the shadow side comes from?
Well, there's no particular astrological influence that causes the shadow. It's their own psyche in relationship to the wholeness of our being. First of all, you're an immortal being, and so am I, and so is everyone else. So we're not our charts, we're not this living matrix. Shadow element is a part of our own psyche that we haven't completely embraced and learned to dance with and celebrate.
Okay, thank you.
So certain combinations like Lilith can highlight the shadow as an opportunity to heal. But the shadow is what we bring in with us from our incarnational history. That those aspects we haven't quite learned to dance with.
My shadow is Black Panther, and what she wants me to learn is how to walk in the dark without making noise,
Mm-hmm.
and how to stalk. And I'm a person who grew up in Texas, but I never killed anything.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even have a beginning first idea of what to do about it. And so I find it extraordinarily interesting that I, as a pacifist, would end up with Black Panther as my shadow side.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd kind of like to know where it came from.
Well, for the Black Panther, there is no shadow side because it can see in the dark.
Thank you so much.
So, it's opening your sight. And
She did. Before I had
yeah.
cataract surgery, she said, leave your glasses in and go out there barefoot.
yeah. And Panther, as all cats, are master stalkers.
Yes, they are.
And as I was explaining to this brother here earlier, the way of Tantra is mastered by the master stalker. The art of listening and being present is actually a stalking technique.
Can you talk about that, please?
Just imagine yourself being a cat in the forest.
Yes.
What do? They listen, they're present. They're totally aware of their complete surrounding. They harmonize with it before they move in a particular direction. That's a stalking technique. Be able to stop on a dime, be 360-degree aware of what the matrix around you is communicating to you, and then move with that communication, whichever direction it calls you. But it's that capacity to move softly and quietly, not to disturb the matrix before you've heard it.
Yes.
And then follow with, I was saying earlier, with the yang aspect of action.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard the shadow side described as black gold.
Yes. You got that treasure waiting for you. You just have to find the right combination. Go ahead.
I just want to make a comment. Keep in mind, you're being directed to stalk, not kill.
Well,
Just because you're stalking doesn't mean.
no, I understand that. It's just that that's my comment. Is, even coming from Texas and being around people who carry rifles all the time, and go out and hunt birds and hunt animals and like that. It's like, I never, that's not part of who I thought I was.
But the characteristics of stalking do not have to be connected to the act of killing.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, the art of stalking is just a consciousness technique.
It's making yourself completely aware. Is
Yeah.
that what you're saying?
It's
Yeah.
just being present for, and being able to really be impeccable with the way in which you move with the energy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The indigenous way they do it in training for stalking is to wear a blindfold in the woods and try walking up like a mountainside hill in the woods barefoot.
Right. Exactly.
And use all your senses except
for sight. Yeah, because our hearing is much more acute before we see, we hear. Yes. Usually. Wow, we're diving deep tonight. Anyone else?
I just want to let you on the audience know that a friend of mine who's an astrologer did Jill Stein's chart.
Okay.
May not be her time this time, but her chart looks really good for next time.
There you go. She'll be leading the awakening.
She's a Taurus tiger.
Sweet. Yeah, the next 4 years will be so completely transforming and rearrange our worlds in such a profound way that I can't even imagine what 2020 is going to look like. So I'm just doing my best to stay present and watch who and what shows up. Especially being here in Mount Shasta, I feel truly blessed. Okay, brothers and sisters, I think we did it.